Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Huddle and Office Hours. Today, we are going to be talking about marketing. And while you might wish that there was a magic wand to help you with your marketing efforts, sad to say that doesn't exist. However, we're going to share with you a lot of resources that will make marketing a lot easier for you and your programs. And before we dive in, though, just a little bit about us and the NTAC. My name is Brittany Stanton. I am a TA liaison with the NTAC team. I have a background in education. I taught for 7 years before moving to an out of school time program. And let me tell you, marketing was always one of those challenges because marketing always meant money. Like you had to spend money to market, but that isn't necessarily true. And we'll talk a little bit more about that today. And with me is my colleague Chaz.
Hello, hello. I am Chaz Saunders. I am also a TA liaison. I also come from education. I taught English and special education for 11 years before transitioning to, 21st CCLC programs, where I had the good fortune to sort of work my way up the ladder. I started as a frontline staff member, and I worked my way up through site coordinator and program director. And so I'm very familiar with the challenges of marketing. I'm also not one to really like say a lot or toot my own horn. So that always felt hard to like celebrate those wins and really be able to express them properly. So if you're in the same boat, don't worry. We have some resources for you.
Great, Chaz. And I see some folks are introducing themselves in the chat. Feel free to let us know who you are, what you do, where you're from as we move through our session today. So, the 21st CCLC NTAC is all about helping people running programs so that you can serve your students and your families better, right? We ultimately want to make sure that all of those who are participating in our programs become uh, lifelong learners and find success in their futures. So we are here today to focus on marketing for your programs. And this does align within the priority areas of the NTAC because we're talking about things like we got to have students in the program to be able to facilitate programming to increase academic recovery and to provide engaging activities and supporting those families. And the other priority areas, you can see them here on the screen. There's a lot of things that the NTAC can support 21st century programs in. So let's go ahead and dive into marketing, and I'm going to hand things over to Chaz.
All right. Well, before we dive into the resources and the details of the strategy, I just wanted to take a moment to review what we'll be covering today. We're going to be using, five different strategies to help you with your marketing. So we have telling stories, right? So storytelling is a powerful tool to help you and your audience emotionally connect with your program, right? Show people just how impactful your program is in the day to day. We're also going to talk about using images, right? Visual content is incredibly engaging for people, especially now. And so using images engages people, more quickly and more and at a deeper level than just with text, right? We're also going to talk about fostering those relationships, building those relationships with your local partners and your families that can help you expand your reach and support, right? Also, word of mouth marketing, which I think often really gets overlooked. But, I'm just going to talk about how we can just harness the power of that word of mouth to spread awareness about your program with your families and just throughout your community. And we're also going to talk about how we can use digital platforms to, help really reach people. And we want to talk about focusing on the platforms that your audience is on, right? We want to know what audience we're trying to reach and, what platforms they're using so that we can focus the digital and, social media platforms where your target audience is most active. So in the next 30 minutes, we're going to review why these strategies work, how to implement them, and most importantly, a resource that can assist you with that implementation. So let's start with talking about telling stories, right? One of the most powerful tools in your marketing toolbox. We as humans, we're sort of hardwired to connect with stories. They create an emotional response that facts and figures just can't match. So when you share a story about a student's success or a parent's gratitude, you make your program relatable and memorable. So you want to start by identifying your program stories of just what are those stories. You want to look for those moments of transformation, whether it's a student overcoming a challenge or a group completing a project or just a staff member going above and beyond in the moment. These are the stories that really show the true impact of your work. And once you identify them, you want to frame them in a way that's simple, feels human, and personal. You want to make sure that you're authentic, and you want to make sure that your story is more than just a list of accomplishments. You want to focus on the journey, the struggles, and the triumphs. You can do this in a lot of different ways. You can interview a student who significantly improved their grades after joining your program, or you could share the story of a family who feels more connected to the school because of their involvement in your program, just as long as they're real human stories. So here we have the Short Impact Storytelling Toolkit. It's designed specifically to help you structure and deliver these stories effectively. This toolkit helps you merge your qualitative data, like testimonials, with your quantitative data, such as program outcomes, to create a complete and compelling narrative. And it's useful because people remember stories, not numbers. Even if you're a real data person, stories are always going to be more impactful and lasting with you. So by using stories and using a toolkit like this one from Sure Impact to craft compelling stories, you create a lasting impression. And when you combine those personal stories with data, you add credibility and depth to the message that you're trying to convey. This approach can be a real game changer when it comes to trying to promote your program. So using something like this toolkit can really help you craft those stories and make sure that you are merging the warm and fuzzies of like the impact with the actual data to show just how transformative your program is. So next up, let's talk a little bit about using images. So did you know that the human brain processes images 60,000 times faster than text? So this means that the visuals you use in your marketing are crucial for grabbing attention and communicating your message quickly. Those like quick hits. High quality images can show the joy and energy and learning that happens in your program sort of, in real time. Um, whether it's just a picture of a student proudly displaying their project or a staff member leading a group activity, um, these visuals tell a story in an instant as opposed to the time that it takes to, read and process the words that we're trying to convey. So it's important to use images that are clear and bright and represent the diversity of your program. You can also use visual platforms like Instagram or Pinterest to create albums that showcase the impact of your work. So, for example, we used this wonderful resource, Canva, to create a quick bookmark style tool that we used to present to 21st CCLC leaders in our summer symposium. Look at this fancy schmancy bookmark here that we've created in Canva. See, and it's just so visually impactful, and just at a glance, it conveys so much information. And while you might have heard that, oh, okay, Canva's great, but we have to pay for it, you really don't. There are so many, you can do basically anything that you would want to do for your program with the free version of Canva in order to craft these compelling images that help you tell your story, sort of stories in a snapshot. Imagine like posting a picture of students that are engaged in a science project and they're laughing and learning together, and you've made it bright and impactful with something like Canva. That single image says more about your program than a paragraph ever could. And if you're worried about, not being the most creative, because I'm certainly not, I think in words, right? But Canva helps you out with these incredibly useful templates that, you can implement. So even if you just need a jumping off point, or if you need guide rails the whole way, like I do, somebody whose stick figures come out crooked. So consider using, not just pictures of the successes and wins in your school, but also you can use Canva for things like infographics that represent key statistics and make that data feel more impactful and visually relevant. So again, Canva is an awesome free tool that allows you to create all these professional quality visuals, even if you don't have that design experience. Um, it lets you do everything from flyers, social media posts, infographics, posters, so much more. I highly recommend checking it out, particularly if you feel like you're struggling with making, those visuals really be impactful and engaging for your audience. Speaking of engaging, let's move on to how we build and nurture those strong relationships with our community partners, how we engage our community to be transformative elements in our 21st CCLC program. Because these partnerships that with your community and your families, they don't just expand your reach, but they also provide additional resources, expertise, and support that can elevate the success of your program. You'd be surprised just how many resources are just in your families alone. So you want to start by setting clear goals for what you want to achieve with your partnerships, though, right? You don't want to just, you know, scattershot and approach a bunch of different people looking for partnerships. You want to have a clear goal for how your partnership can better your program and can also be beneficial to your partner. So, for example, do you need something like increased visibility? Maybe you need more volunteers, or maybe you just need, additional funding stream for a project that you're looking to do that, doesn't fit within the parameters of your 21st CCLC funding. Whatever it is, once your goals are defined, you want to look within your own community to identify potential partners. So, these could be local businesses, they could be, local media outlets, other nonprofits, or even just donors or volunteers within the network that you've built. It's essential to clearly outline the roles and responsibilities with your partner from the beginning, knowing who should be doing what, and uh, you know what role each of you serve, what functions each of you perform in the partnership that you're creating. So you want to think about collaborating with businesses that align with your mission, obviously, right? So if you're co-hosting an event, you want to make sure that whatever partner that you've engaged in order to co-host this event has mission and goals that are aligned with yours. You could also do something like partnering with schools or faith-based organizations to expand your outreach into different segments of the community where you might not have, had that kind of reach. Um, they don't have Partnerships don't have to be complex like joint grant applications, right? They can be something simple like sharing space for an event. So the Soapbox Engage 4-step guide to developing community partnerships offers you really practical and actionable advice on how to build, maintain, and assess those community partnerships. It includes steps on defining partnership parameters, leveraging your existing network to find the right collaborators, and how you can increase marketing by engaging in those partnerships. Building strong partnerships can bring new resources to your program. It can increase the visibility of your program, and it can open up a whole world of shared expertise, all of which enhance the impact of your program. The right partnership can even help secure grant funding by demonstrating collaboration and broad community support. So don't discount them. And with a clear plan and regular communication, these relationships can evolve into long-term collaborations that benefit your program and your partners. So now let's talk about word of mouth marketing. One of the most powerful and definitely the most cost-effective way to increase visibility for your 21st CCLC program. So concept is simple. When participants or families and community members talk about your program in a positive light, it drives more interest and engagement in your program. But how can you amplify this natural process and sort of make sure people are talking about your program? Well, first, you want to create memorable experiences for your participants that they want to talk about, right? Seems silly, but you want those impactful, flashbulb worthy moments. You can do this through exciting program activities, fun ways to recognize achievements of the students in your program, or just events that get the community involved. You also want to give your supporters easy tools to spread the word. You want to provide them with simple and impactful messaging or a social media post that they can then share, or even branded stuff like t-shirts or stickers that you might have been able to get with the help of a partner that you've engaged in the community partnerships. Regardless, you want to encourage participants to share their experiences online using, I don't know, specific hashtags, or even just by leaving testimonials that you can feature on your website or your own personal social media pages. So, a great example of using word of mouth in action is sort of creating brand ambassadors, people who go out into different segments of the community, and they're sort of your advocates, they're your cheerleaders in those segments of your community. You want to provide them with those kinds of materials that we were just talking about, the brief talking points, social media templates, maybe even for sharing things. So that seems like a lot, but we have a useful toolkit here provided by wordofmouth.org. It's an action plan, and it takes you through 8 easy steps for creating something that is actionable that you can actually then roll out for the different members of your community, particularly when it comes to those brand ambassadors. Um, so if we look here, you have things like, you want to assign a team. And again, this is one of those times where you want to make sure that, people have very clear expectations of what they're supposed to do versus what others are supposed to do. Um, Viralize everything, right? We want to make sure everything is as shareable as possible and as engaging as possible, because we know, especially when you're sharing things on social media, it's easy to just scroll past something that isn't immediately visually impactful to you. the this action plan uh, can help you if you are like me. When I started as a site coordinator, you're a little shy when it comes to like sharing the wins that are in your program. So even if it's something as simple as just striking up a couple conversations with parents, as they're picking up kids, starting there and then using the steps in this action plan to then roll it out to a bigger and more comprehensive word of mouth marketing campaign will be incredibly impactful. So it's also important to note that word of mouth marketing isn't just effective, it's also incredibly authentic, right? Because a lot of marketing can feel like fake, or it can feel like it's constructed or manufactured, right? But when one parent tells another parent about this incredible program that you put together, and these amazing events that kids don't want to miss, they're willing to miss other things in order to come to your program events. That's more impactful than marketing that you can pay for. So not only is word of mouth marketing incredibly impactful, but it's also very, very cost effective. People trust recommendations from people that they know, and so by enabling your supporters to share their positive experiences, you'll build that trust and you'll expand your program's reach without having to incur insignificant marketing costs. So let's talk about using online and the social media platforms, or just like in person, networking, communicating. In today's world, it's crucial that you meet your audience where they are interacting and engaging with information, whether that's online via social media or in person via community events. Knowing where your target audience is and where they're spending their time is essential for effective communication. So you want to start by finding out where your target audience, be it students, families, community members, spend most of their time. Are they primarily on Instagram? Is it more of a Facebook community? Or do they really just link up more through in-person events? Once you know, you're going to want to tailor your marketing to fit these platforms. If your audience is on social media, you want to focus on creating engaging posts or stories or videos. If they prefer email or newsletters or in-person outreach, adjust your strategy accordingly. If you know that most of your parents are active on something like Facebook, for instance, use Facebook groups to share updates or events and success stories. Or if your community values in-person interaction, think about holding things like informational sessions or just workshops on a variety of topics just to engage them directly and get them in the door so that you can talk to them and network with them. So the Donor Box Guide to Social Media for Nonprofits outlines the best strategies for using social media to engage your target audience, increase your visibility, and build a following. It goes over, what kind of benefits you could see from having, a well-run social media plan, what it means to have that kind of social media plan, how to build an online community where, then you also sort of create not just social media, but you also create a word of mouth marketing campaign within your community that slowly grows and grows and grows. And it gives you some background on how to research where your audience is actually spending their time without making that feel, very manufactured and, interrogative. By focusing your efforts on platforms where your audience is already active, you can maximize your reach, increase your engagement, and most importantly, you can make sure your message is getting to the right people in the right way. So let's go ahead and talk about um, the After School Alliance program toolbox. So we there while we've shared a bunch of different resources, these are by no means the be all and end all for these particular strategies. And After School Alliance has an amazing toolkit here that sort of brings together a number of resources that assist you when it comes to marketing and telling the story of your program. This toolkit's designed specifically for OST programs, and it provides insights into everything from branding, storytelling, to parent engagement strategies. It also includes examples of successful after-school marketing campaigns to inspire your own efforts. This toolkit walks you through the fundamentals of creating a strong brand for your program and outlines the most effective channels for promoting your message. It also provides you with a range of marketing strategies from crafting compelling stories to increasing parent engagement through targeted outreach and communication. Whether you're just starting or you're looking to enhance your current efforts, the toolkit has resources that can help you at every stage. Um, for example, you want to use the branding section of the toolkit to develop a clear and consistent message about your program's mission and values, right? I think it's often understated just how impactful it can be to have a brand for your program. You're like, okay, well, they're not just an after school program, right? They're an after school program that really builds academic skills and they focus on, STEM and literacy, things like that. Like this brand where people think of you not just as an after school program, but as an after school program that has a clear mission and vision, that has values, right? That also align with their own. And you can also leverage the tips that are in this toolkit for parent engagement. One of the best things I think that often gets overlooked is creating newsletters. I think, in this day and age, a good old-fashioned newsletter feels a bit antiquated, but I think it's really impactful. Just being able to hand somebody something and say, look, these are the wins that we are celebrating here as a community in this program. And having them being able to take that away. And even if they don't digest it there in the moment, it's something that they can then go interact with when, they have that time. So the toolkit offers a holistic approach to marketing. It tries to hit everything from branding to storytelling to digital marketing, really. It's a kind of like a one-stop shop for all your marketing needs. And it ensures that you can effectively communicate your program's values to your stakeholders. So, as an example of just how impactful these things can be, I'd like to take a moment and take a look at a video that was created, using the resources on Sure Impact, right? So just look at how engaging this program feels from the video that they've put together, and just how much you'd want to be there having fun with these kids. Let's take a look.
When I'm at home all alone, I'll definitely think about being with my friends when I'm not able to be, and I would think about times that I was with my friends, and that was the after school program.
The 21st Century Community Learning Centers is a program that the federal government has authorized under the Every Student Succeeds Act to directly fund programs in the after-school world. After school meaning before school, after school, anytime the regular school day is not operating. This title was designed to serve students. We have school districts who have their own after-school programs who operate in the school. And then we also have community-based organizations who operate outside the school but have a working relationship with the schools they serve. 21st Century in Montana looks different in every location. The range is large and everybody's different. It makes 21st Century unique.
After school program in Boulder is a piece of the pie. We start at 7:30 in the morning and we're here till 5:30. We have free programming for the kids. A lot of the parents that we have work up in Helena. They commute to work, and this free program offers them a safe place for their kids to be after school.
Our program has a little over 100 kids registered in it, about 80 per day. They range in age from the kinder cubs, which are 4-year-olds, all the way through 8th grade. We have enrichment activities that are STEM-based. We do career development. We have literacy education, along with just social emotional learning. They do a lot of games and activities, allowing them to have that hands-on learning, that purposeful movement, working with their peers that may not get to spend the day with. We want to make sure that they feel like they have a safe place, a safe adult that's not necessarily tied directly to their school day, their education.
Without this program, the kids don't have any other options to do in a small rural community. And with our program, we're able to offer enrichment activities they wouldn't normally get, and build up their interests and their likes and their social emotional well-being so that they can be healthy, engaged in adults.
So this video was put together as part of a much larger project out in Montana, but you don't have to have a full film studio to be able to make an engaging video that will tell the story about your program and the impact that it's having on students. In the chat, we just dropped the webinar takeaway for today that highlights the things that we shared, both the tips and the resources. But before we navigate into our next section, there was a question in the chat about how we found the PDF for something, and I just wanted to share. I'm going to drop this link in the chat for you. And the PDFs that are part of this After School Alliance Marketing After School Toolkit, you just click on which one of these marketing strategies you're interested in, and it took me directly to a PDF with those particular tools. So that's how you can navigate towards that. So hopefully, thank you, Chaz, for walking us through all of those things. Also know that there is a wealth of resources in the archives for Y4Y on the NTAC website. So Chaz just dropped the link to that in the chat for you. But you can check out the archived resources on the NTAC website, and you'll find resources from Y4Y, but also look at the resources that are available under professional learning, because you'll also find some things in there that you might be able to implement in your programs as well. Now, this will wrap up the first portion of today's time, where we're focused on sharing those resources and tips and tricks around marketing for you. And we do encourage you to share some feedback about whether this was useful. So there will be a poll that will pop up on your screen related to what was shared during today's first half. And if you could provide some feedback, we would greatly appreciate it. That all being said, we are going to shift our conversation into what we call office hours. So we are here to answer questions, and the topic on mind is marketing, but feel free to ask whatever questions that you might have bouncing around. And Chaz and I will be, and other members of the NTAC team who are around, will chime in with, answers or recommendations or things that we might be able to share to help you in your journey as a program person. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we do actually have a question, Chaz, from the Q&A box. Thank you, Steve, for your question. The question is there messaging that you find that works best for the word of mouth strategy? Follow-up, what resonates at the community level? What resonates at the national level? So I open that up to the NTAC team to chime in.
Brittany, I would say one of the most important things, particularly when you're thinking about word of mouth, is the why them question. Why this person that you're talking to? Why do they need or want what you're offering and what you're encouraging them to engage in? And that message has the opportunity to be very customized as part of that conversation. It has an opportunity to be something that is very specific to that family, to that household, to that partner, to whoever it is that you're looking to have that conversation with. The other thing I'll share is something that I learned from a development manager who I worked with for several years. And he taught me that it's very important when you're trying to use really any kind of strategy, but especially he would have said word of mouth or social media, that you really need 5 touches. And he would have said to you that you needed a touch that's 2 weeks out, that's 1 week out, that's 3 days out, that's 2 days out, and 1 day out. And he would also say, as you think about those last 3 days, that day 3, that messaging shouldn't look the same in all of those days. And so he had 3 I's that he said that you needed to include in these. And I had the chance to see this question coming in advance, and I tried to Google it and see if this was something that like other people are using. And it's not, but it's something that I will tell you, in learning it, it worked for me. I didn't find it online. So here are the 3 I's. On day 3, so 3 days before the thing that you're communicating about, it's important to give the info. This is where you just say, hey, here's what you need to know about this. Day 2 is that very clear invite. We want you to be part of this. Please come, please attend. And then that last day is, hey, how do you plan to engage in this? It's inquiry. So it's the info, the invite, and the inquiry. Say, hey, here's the information you need to know. Here's a very clear invite. And here's the inquiry. Are you going to attend? Are you going to engage? Can you in some way participate in this? And so maybe that helps somebody as you think about how you're going to use word of mouth or social media and trying to engage people in that process.
I just love that. I like that, like so catchy, so easy. And I think that that's so important, especially whenever you're thinking about word of mouth as a program leader or a program staff member, to somebody within the community that you want to partner with, or I'm thinking like, local state leadership or community leadership, like your mayor and things like that. Like there's definitely like a formality that you should be respecting whenever communicating in that way. I also remember from my time in programs that we used to say that word of mouth was how we got our students. And it was because current families were telling people about the program. And that kind of conversation, that messaging does look a little bit different than if you're talking to the mayor, right? And so I think that resonates both on like the community level and the national level. But I wonder, Chaz, if you have anything that you wanted to add to this response.
Yeah, I do. I think it's also important to realize the value of that sort of like organic word of mouth stuff. Like I know when I was running programs, I would frequently have like during dismissal and like my program kiddos are coming in, you'd have kiddos that aren't in your program, right? But they're sort of sneaking in, they're peeking in to see what their friends are doing in program, and then they learn about like how cool your program is, and then they go tell their parents, and then like a month later, I have new kids in my program, and they're like, "Oh, my son or daughter just like wouldn't stop talking about like wanting to be here in after school, so we signed them up." I mean, I have parents who they're literally home. They don't need their kid to be in after school, right? But the kid wants to be there so badly just because of how that word of mouth has just sort of spread organically. And I also want to echo the value of making it like a really personal interaction when it comes to talking to parents when they pick up their kid, right? It gives you that opportunity to say, here is how the program is directly impacting your student. Like this is how it's meaningful for them personally, right? And that's so much more meaningful to a parent than, sort of like a broad message that you're trying to send.
Yeah, speaking from that personal place about why is this impactful is so valuable. Um, so we have another question, and I think this one's a challenge. Do you have any successful marketing strategies for high school programs? It's a very specific group of students. So, what do you guys think about marketing for high schoolers?
That's an interesting one, right? Because anything that doesn't feel, organic, that feels manufactured or constructed, high schoolers they sniff it out immediately, right? When they know that you're trying to reach them. So I really love just sort of like casually engaging in those discussions. Like if you have the opportunity to like talk to this youth, like person to person or in small groups, you just sort of casually mention the cool stuff that you're doing, like the like awesome the people that you're bringing in, the community partners that might be holding workshops, stuff like that. You're not even in a way where it sounds like you're trying to sell them on the program. You're just sort of like talking out loud about the cool stuff that you're excited that it's happening in your program. And all of a sudden, these kids that might feel like they're too cool for it, they're like, "Oh, wait, what? You said you said race cars? Oh, well that's pretty cool. Wait, you said that you're bringing in like somebody from 4-H to talk about like, animals? Oh, well, I like that, Well, I'm not too cool for that." And you'd be surprised just how impactful that can be and how you can, bring especially like older students in that way. And that also feeds into word of mouth because then they tell other friends and they're like, "Hey, listen, I know that this isn't something we were thinking about doing, but now maybe we should think about it because it looks like they're doing a lot of really cool stuff here."
Yeah, absolutely. Hillary, do you have any tips?
Sure. My first thing I would say is high schoolers are your best marketers. So when you can get high schoolers to say, come to this program that I'm already going to other high schoolers, that's your best chance. Sometimes though, we don't have high schoolers who are going to be good marketers, who are going to say to their friends, to their whoever it is that, hey, you should come, you should be a part of this. And so the second thing I'd encourage you to think about is why do they want what it is that you're offering? Right? Why, and Chaz kind of alluded to this, but why should they want to come to this? What benefit does it have for them? And then we need to put on our thinking caps that are high school oriented, because what did you want when you were in high school, right? You maybe wanted a job, you wanted money, you wanted time to hang out with your friends, right? You probably didn't want um, academic enrichment or homework help, or right, you may have needed those things, don't get me wrong, but that wasn't necessarily what you were going to seek out, because high schoolers have the ability to come to our programs or not come to our programs, oftentimes very autonomously. And so we need to make sure that we're paying attention to that aspect of how we talk to them about what's being offered. And so can you offer them an internship or certification or some other kind of opportunity that's going to have an impact for them that they can see the benefit of?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Hillary. And I just want to share, this was something that we did in the program that I worked in, but just the caution first is, if you are going to engage in any kind of social media, there's some safety parameters you need to make sure that you're putting into place, right? You need to make sure that you have the correct permissions for sharing images or videos of students on social media platforms. And then if you are going to feature a student or have them engage with your social media platform, that there is some kind of permissions and conversation with the families, and making sure that like all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed, because safety comes first. We can't ignore social media. It is out there. The students are on it anyway, but we can utilize that to our advantage in a very safe way. And particularly for high schoolers, that might be a way that you can kind of see some different kind of engagement that you might not necessarily see like at an elementary school level, right? And so the thing that we did at the program that I worked at, which was highly successful, but we made sure that there was strong safety measures in place, is that we had student lives on stories with Instagram and Facebook. And there was a protocol in place where the students that were the featured student that were doing the live, right? It was like day in the life. They would go around the program and they'd take these videos about what they were doing and the things that were going on. And then they would send them to a staff member who was in charge of the social media platforms, and they would put together the reels or the stories or whatever it was to then post to the social media platform. And those were highly engaging, and we actually saw older students join the program as a result of seeing their friends in those stories. So just making sure that you're doing social media in a very safe way and having those strong protocols in place and permissions before entertaining that kind of strategy is key. But also, it's probably a really strong strategy you might want to be thinking about in 2024, almost 2025. Okay, so we have some more questions, and I want to make sure we get to all of them. We have one here asking about the resources that were available in Y for Y. Does NTAC have anything like that, or is it all still in Y for Y?
So in this current moment in time, I would say please visit the archives for specific things you're looking for. But I will also say many of those things are being revised, renewed. There are new things being added to the website all the time. I would encourage you to sign up for our newsletter. It's once a month, and it does let you know what's new that's coming out. But some things that are coming down the pike as far as content goes include sustainability and recruiting and hiring quality staff, because I did notice HR was mentioned in that question. And so, yes, there are some things coming. We're adding resources to that. And look, Brittany's going to show you how to sign up for the newsletter as part of that. So thanks, Brittany.
Yeah, of course. I figured it was an opportune moment. And if you just go to our website, this pops up and you can type in your email and there you go. You got the newsletter. But where you can find the things that Hillary was talking about is under our resources. So if you go there, there are 3 different web pages. There's the professional learning portal, which has all of the current things that NTAC is producing and putting out there, which it includes courses, it includes mini courses, there's micro learning, there's toolkits, there's so much already there. Check that out. And then there is also a link to the external resource library, which is just a wonderful connection to other resources that are available out there on a plethora of topics. But then there's the archived resources, which we've mentioned a couple times already. This is where you can access the Y4Y archives, but you can also find archived events from the NTAC. All of our webinars and things that we've done, series online, you can find on there, including today's. Give it about a week or so, and this will even be up on the website. So I hope that helped. And always check back for more, because there's always new stuff being developed and being shared. But the way to stay in touch with all of that, like Hillary mentioned, is the newsletter. Okay, so next question is there a specific marketing message that works to invite parents to engage in the program? Specifically, they're having a challenge with parents who are standing outside the door waiting for students instead of coming inside to engage.
I definitely struggle with this a little bit, in my own programs. And what I found was really helpful was doing sort of an occasional parent drop-in day where we're doing an activity, but it's an activity that like parents can come in and observe, or they can even be part of in some meaningful way. And then you sort of start doing kind of the messaging that Hillary was talking about earlier when we were talking about marketing. You start that a couple days out, right? Like, hey, here's something really cool we're doing, with the students, and parents are invited to come. And then, that like 2 days out, you're like, hey, listen, you're of course more than welcome to come in and give us a hand and, help out and watch what your kid is learning or doing. And then, that day, before, like, hey, listen, is like, do you plan on coming? Like, is there something that, we can do to make it easier for you, something like that. And that combined with the students then sort of like, the increased questioning from the students where it's like, oh, mom, are you going to come to, we're doing lit talks or whatever. We're checking out all the cool TikToks based on literature that we did or whatever. Can you want to come and check that out with me? Things like that, them to getting the kids to also ask the parent to want to engage, right? So it's not just us being like, hey, come in and engage with our program. I also loved having like like an occasion like open house where the parents can come in, they can meet the staff, they can chat. I'd have like, coffee and some donuts or something like that, because that's always a good draw. Just something to sort of spark a little conversation so they just feel less hesitant to like jump in, when they do come pick up their kid on a day-to-day basis.
Brittany, one of the things for me that I have seen when running programs is that then in that space where parents are standing outside the door, and I had a context where we didn't let parents in the door because of some of the safety issues around that for us, that instead we assign staff members to stand outside that door and use that time between we've called your kid to come out of program and they get their backpack and put their homework in, all the things that have to happen, and use that as a space to have conversation with the parent about their child, about what's going on in program, about what's going on at home, and really use that for networking. And so we intentionally assign staff to have those conversations and to be part of that. And so that is something that's been very helpful in like that building that rapport and relationship, because over time the parents were more likely to hang out and have conversations with staff, and so then they're more likely to come to the next thing that you invited them to, because they know who you are, maybe you're less intimidating. Maybe they start to see the value of making that time, making that space for those conversations, because they see how it benefits their child and how it benefits them. And so we kind of use that as that networking space and just acted like we're going to use it as a real thing that happens in our program to create that.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that you brought up some very good points, that there were things that were specific to your program that informed the practice and policy around dismissal, right? A very similar experience for myself. The program that I was working in pre-pandemic, families, they had to come inside the building to sign their child out. Then the pandemic happened and all of that policy changed. And even when we returned in person, we didn't return to having families come into the building to sign. We had to find other ways of our dismissal process and making it an effective and efficient process. But I think that I understand the want to like market to parents, but I think like the key here, no matter what your particular situation is, the size of your program, the location, etc., it's the relationships that you've built with the families that are going to change that interaction. And that, I think, kind of like what Hillary's saying, that starts with what are you doing staff wise? What are you doing with the program? Like, what are your practices and policies around engaging with families? You can send as many flyers home as you want. You can post it to Class Dojo or whatever it is, but that doesn't necessarily mean that any of that is going to, yield results. It's going to be through the conversations and the relationships that you build. Also, just so it's on everyone's radar, in the chat, there is a glitch with the newsletter link when you go to the website and that pop-up. So the direct link to the newsletter is currently in the chat for you if you are interested in signing up. And we do apologize for that technical glitch, and we appreciate you bringing it to our attention. Wonderful. Thank you for your input, both Chaz and Hillary. If you have any other questions from our attendees, if you would like to drop them in the Q&A, or feel free to raise your hand and we'll unmute you, or even if you just want to drop it in the chat, that's fine. But let's go on to our next question. So, what are some effective ways to gather stories from students and families? Are there any tools or approaches you'd recommend to collecting testimonials that resonate?
I honestly don't want to discount the effectiveness of a good old-fashioned anonymous suggestion box, because I can't tell you how many times, once I set that up, that you get feedback that somebody is just like a little too like nervous or shy to tell you in the moment, right? But you can still gather those in a way where everybody feels comfortable expressing it. And it led to a lot of stories that like I feel like I wouldn't have gotten from parents or students otherwise. So I think that's a really great, low cost way to do so.
Yeah, I remember there were the holidays are coming up. It's like a wonderful opportunity to get some snippets from folks. Just come up with the question that you want to ask. Be very intentional on crafting that question, and then just ask everybody the same question. And then you can assess through looking at all of the responses, which ones have what you're looking for in highlighting X, Y, or Z elements of your program, right? The reason why I caution being very intentional about the question and doing it for everybody is because, I've done this several times, and you get the kids is like, the best thing about the program is the food, which is great for that child and very true. But is that the thing that you want to, shout out to the world? Kind of depends on your program, I guess, and what you want to share. But being very intentional around what the question is so that you can get some feedback, and then also be making sure that question is open-ended, but being prepared with some additional follow-up questions if the open-ended question doesn't really give you the answer, right? Sometimes, especially depending on the student, that you might need to dig a little bit deeper into that conversation to get a really, deep response and testimonial. Hillary, any other thoughts?
The only other thing is that oftentimes asking that a couple of questions in a group setting gets more beneficial answers, because people ping off of each other and the ideas that formally can be a focus group, but informally it could be, I'm now picking on it, but a group of parents standing at the door waiting to pick up kids, right? And just say, hey, anybody got any ideas around this? Are you willing to answer? And as they listen to each other, the what's shared evolves, or you get more out of that. Same with a group of students, same with a group of stakeholders or staff or whoever it is that you're trying to get that message and that story from.
Yeah, absolutely. Focus groups are a great way to get that kind of bulk input from the various stakeholders, whether it's a family focus group or a student focus group, or even a combination. There's lots of things you can do. Chaz, any other input here?
Yeah, I was gonna say, so the suggestion box is sort of like the low effort way of gathering these stories. A really high, like sort of a way that has a little more effort involved in it, that I used to love doing was sort of a little like what I used to call campfire story time. So like we would have things like we do like a healthy version of a s'more. So it would be like, celery and like sun butter, like something else, right? And like we'd sit there and we eat our healthy s'mores and we'd talk about different stories from like, the after school program. And I normally do like I'll do it like halfway through the year and then like at the end of the year or whatever, just some like stuff to check in so that kids can talk about what the most like impactful experiences were for them from their perspective, because sometimes that looks different than how we think it looks as like adults running program or how parents think it looks, the things that are most impactful for them. But yeah, that's just a fun little time, like a fun little activity you can do to gather those stories too.
Absolutely. And I love the idea of like campfire stories. What a perfect time of year for it, right? We're all thinking fall, we're all thinking, autumnal colors and bundling up, even if you're in, a warmer part of the country. You just can't help it. So, great opportunity there to kind of like thematically collect some of these stories. Um, kind of a tangent off of that in a way. How do you ensure that you are protecting privacy in these stories? Being sensitive around, who you've talked to and what you're sharing.
I would say a couple, well, I will say Brittany already talked about social media and especially around youth. So with that as the starting place, some other things just to think about and that I've had to wrestle with in my experience is sometimes if you get somebody to share, like, how has this program really impacted my family? It involves them telling their story of like where they've been. And my practice personally has always been, if we're going to tell some part of that story, they've said, yeah, you can record me, you can, I'm going to write you a letter, I'm going to, whatever it is, to make sure that they see what that looks like in its final design has been very important for me, because we've had family members come back and say, well, I know I said that to you, Miss Hillary, but I didn't want that in like, you know, out for everybody to see. And others say, no, like I think that that tells the story of the impact that this program has, and I want other people to know. So I personally would say that's important. Um, I would say things around youth are like, does their face have to be associated with their voice, right? Like, or can you use a voiceover and not a picture of that child, right? Things like that that create anonymity. And then the last thing I'd say is I think that it's important for programs to understand like what kind of protections a student may need who's in some kind of care, whether it's in foster care, whether there's parents or guardians or others who have restricted access to that child, and like how that plays into what's shared uh, on the internet or in any other kind of place or space where somebody might have access to it. And so just being aware of all of those dynamics are important, and that they may not be all of the things you need to think of, but just there's a few to kind of put in your mind as you think about that. Chaz or Brittany, you got other things to add to that?
I mean, I think what you shared is very wise, and I have very similar experiences of there was a family that we centered around an appeal letter. It was a community-based organization. 21st Century was only a sliver of the pie, right? And so we did an annual appeal letter that centered around this one family's story, and they had experienced a lot a lot and a lot of trauma. And they were part of the writing process, the before, the during, the after. They approved it, and that just is so important, especially whenever you're dealing with traumas. And you might not realize what traumas are there whenever you get in, when you start this process, even. And so just, being respectful of people's lived experiences and making sure that you have the permission, not just from the beginning, but with each step of the process. How about you, Chaz? Any other input?
I mean, I guess it probably goes without saying, but you want to make sure that, you're familiar with, the laws surrounding privacy, right? Like you want to make sure that, you're adhering to the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, obviously, right? That's step one. But I think don't be afraid to anonymize the information, right? Like change as much of the information as you really can while still maintaining the impactful part of, like, what you're trying to, the story you're trying to tell. There's nothing wrong with, like, not just changing names, changing dates, figures, facts, whatever you need, just so that, somebody feels like their privacy is being respected while you're still telling a really powerful story.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just catching up on the chat here, and I just want to share. I can't remember what question we were talking about whenever I mentioned Class Dojo, and somebody shared that that really worked for their program. Lean into the things that work for your program. If it works for you, keep doing it. If it doesn't work for you, try something else. And really, that's how the whole marketing challenge needs to be faced, right? Try something and see what the results yield. And you won't know until you try. So as we, if there are any other questions, please drop them in the chat in the Q&A box. As we near kind of the end of our time today, I do want to do one more question that we've had come in previously. Unless anybody else drops something in the chat, we will certainly hang out and chat with you. So this question is, what tips do you have for creating high quality visuals if our program doesn't have a graphic designer or a photographer or a high quality camera, etc.? And are there easy to use tools for someone with little design experience? And so I just want to go back to Canva to say that is a fantastic tool, and you don't have to have the professional camera or video camera or such and such to be able to utilize it. It's very user friendly in that way. Chaz, what do you think?
Oh yeah, I think Canva is really awesome, and I think there are a number of other you know softly pieces of software or whatever that also serve the same purpose. I like Adobe Spark a lot. That's a really good one. And like both of those, they also have templates that you can use, which are lifesavers to me because again, I can think of words all day long. When you want me to put them into like a meaningful visual, my brain goes blank. But when you at least give me a template to start from, then oh, okay, all of a sudden I can just start building onto that, right? It's like instead of just giving me the whole box of Legos, you're like, oh, okay, well, here's the basis of a house. Like, here's the foundation of a house. Oh, okay, well, now I can build the house. That's fine. That it makes it so much easier for you.
Yeah, and when it comes to visuals, kind of to your point, Chaz, it's not really about words, right? Like, yes, there has to be, the program name, what you do, there has to be some information. But whenever it comes to that visual elements, it's got to be eye-catching. You want it to be colorful. You want it to be thinking about your particular audience that you're speaking to, right? The flyer that goes home or the infographic or whatever it is that goes home to parents and guardians probably looks different than the one that you send home with the high schooler student, right? That you want to kind of think about that audience and what are the trends? What are the visuals that are going to grab that particular age group, that particular demographic? Thinking about your audience will also inform what that visual kind of develops as, right? And I love your suggestion, Chaz, about templates. Like you just go into Canva and look in the templates, type in your theme or whatever, and there's going to be a whole bunch of options to choose from, and it's just great. So there are like Canva, there are other resources out there that you can easily design really attractive graphics without ever having done any graphic design in your entire life. There's a lot more available than Microsoft Publisher, if you remember Microsoft
Yeah,
Publisher.
I do remember Microsoft Publisher. That was very helpful. Yeah, I mean, there is so much available, right? And there's also the whole world of, AI, like you using that to help inform that. And in fact, I think Canva has recently partnered with like some large AI company or another in order to add some of that functionality to them. But there are a number of, free, like image generating, AI models where you can use those if you are just struggling to have like that right image for your poster or what have you. There are also a lot of really good copyright free sites with high quality images. I love using Pexels, Pexel. Great site, amazing images on there, and it's not something you have to pay a copyright for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's also really important whenever you're using images and graphics that are just out there on the internet, making sure that they are free for use is another important thing to consider. Not just that there's like a paywall, but like what are the copyrights around that image and making sure that you are following those rules, if you will. And something like Pexels, you can actually look specifically for uh, images and other types of graphics that don't have, like they're just free to use no matter what. So that's a great suggestion. Well, I haven't seen any other questions come in the Q&A or the chat box. So I want to just share as we wrap up today. This is how you can get in contact with us. We did share with you the newsletter already, but if you missed it, look back in the chat, or you can use the QR code here to access the newsletter sign up. Also, check us out on X and LinkedIn, where you can find a whole bunch of tips and tricks. We post resources and things like that. Our website, of course, 21st CCLC NTAC.org, where you can find all the resources and more that we shared today. And if you ever have any questions, feel free to shoot us an email at info@21stcclcntac.org. Thank you all for joining us today on this conversation around marketing. We hope that you'll dive into some of the tools that we shared and see some results in your marketing efforts in your programs. Chaz, thank you for co-hosting and sharing all of the things today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brittany. Always a pleasure presenting with you.
And I think we have one more poll. If you're still around, we'd appreciate your feedback. This poll is focused more on the conversation in the second half of our time today. So whether this conversation was beneficial to you in, varying level, you can give us that feedback on the poll. It's on the screen for you now. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Sign up for the newsletter and see you in a couple weeks.